Choking seas, raise a glass in celebration. Broken trees, make a toast to amputation. Our glory burns. Shine a light, mesmerized by information. Learned minds, valued thoughtful decimation. They feel they're doing right. They think the future's bright. When did the fires of hell start to look like heaven? Glorified codes and signs, formulas they enshrine, breeding the land, rise of mayhem, worshipping spells of harm, breathing the progress charm. Celebrate death to the living. So when does home end? And when does the peace begin? And where is your love that sets all the children free? How can you not care? Why will you not live for peace? The tide is turning, the levee's straining, but you're so proud the wall keeps forming. Your disconnection is not perfection. All your inventions are aberrations. While you're resisting, your thoughts persisting, the excavation of the lemming's fortune. Your brutal niceness, your kind indifference perpetuates the endless destruction.
Hi everyone. This is a video about water being the life of man's consciousness, or the consciousness of man's life. When we breathe out, we create water. Now, we want to go back to some of the early Dream of Life videos to explain some of the analogies that we use in lineal terms to comprehend what we mean by this, and then bring it into everyday sense and how we're living. We mentioned how every dream has a creator. Now imagine the dream of life as a bubble, and that bubble, you can call it a hologram, and all the thoughts that make up the dream of life were suspended in the bubble, all held in the bubble. And to set that information into motion, to set the cow, the horse, the grain of sand, the what we now call the celestial bodies, what we now call the grass and the insects, everything that makes up the dream of life that we touch, taste, feel, smell, hear, see, to set that into motion, the Creator breathed its life into the bubble, and then everything was set into motion. That life is the breath that we breathe. As the Creator moved its life into the bubble, the Creator became man, created man, because we continue to breathe the original breath that the Creator had created. Now, that's a lineal analogy. Now let's peel away the lineal analogy here and comprehend that there is no outside or inside to the bubble. There's no within to the bubble or without to the bubble. There is no beginning or end to the bubble. That all is water and all has been water. There's never not been water.
So really to say, even the first breath, the first shouldn't be in there, but it's just trying to find a way to get it so we all can get a picture of it,
yeah.
Comprehend it.
Now, the first breath of the dream of life that was set into motion is the breath that you and I are now breathing now, that water. And the Creator was the first original man. is the original man. And every man created ever since was supposed to be in that original image. Now, when we're talking original, it means that every man is original, that there's not one the same as the next. Every grain of sand is not the same. Every cow is not the same. Everything of the dream of life, there is no sameness. That is of the original thought, of the original dream, of the original breath. Now, for the Creator to set in motion the dream of life, holding all those thoughts, imagine this, contemplating on it, thinking it all out, working the whole thing out, holding it all in focus. We have this capacity to do this. And in setting it into motion by breathing, giving life to that original thought. Every thought that was created is original. And every man that's come out of that, every man that the Creator created, man being woman as well as man, we're man, are of the original thought. Every thought is carried through the water, because it is the water that is the carrier of the intention of the Creator. Just like we use copper to communicate through a telephone, and microwaves, radio waves, etc., to communicate signals and frequencies that we use to communicate in the dead world. So through the breath, we can sense the thoughts of the Creator that we are. It is only through sense, through water, that we truly can communicate with each other.
Yeah, because we sense each other through the water.
Now, all the alphabet languages, going right back, every single alphabet language that ever existed, are all of the system. Every holy book, every scroll and tablet, and no matter how far you dig down, where you go and find an alphabet language, you're finding the remains and the evidence of the system of that time, All alphabet languages, mathematics and geometry, are nonsense. Those thoughts, those images do not exist in the dream of life, in that hologram. There is nowhere where our children, not exposed to the system, the education of the system, nor exposed to any man who was educated or brainwashed of that system, can they go to nature. Where can our children go to nature to learn about ABC or 1, 2, 3, or any of the dialects, or any of the constructs that have come out of all alphabet languages today that we call gravity, the Supreme Court, law, statutes, common law, commerce, ownership, etc. There's 1,001 things that we've explained already in other videos. So if our children can't go anywhere in nature, anywhere in the dream of life, anywhere in that hologram, and access those images, because we're talking about sensory life forms here, the sensory life form of the cow, our children, we don't have to explain to our children about the cow. They can go to the cow and get the information directly from the cow without us having to explain it. We don't have to become a third party interceding between our children and the cow. They can have a direct sensory experience. They can sense the cow directly. Just as they can sense the breath that they breathe, that is the water that they breathe out. They can sense directly. They don't need me to intercede in their breath, just as we don't have to intercede with anybody else.
And you know what they also learned from just going into nature is they learn about originality and uniqueness.
Yeah.
Because in the system, in the dead world, it's all about the sameness.
Yeah.
I mean, ABC 1, 2, 3, we all read the same words, the same language, we live in the same houses, we drive the same cars, have you got a Gucci watch or have you got a something else watch, a Rolex, or, it's like, it's all about sameness. Totally opposite to if you go in the nature, you won't find one plant that's the same as the next.
Exactly. See, the reason we're bringing these things up is because these images that we call nonsense do not exist. They're just a fantasy made up by man, set into motion in the water without any sensory life, no breath of life embodied in the image of A. So when the Creator breathed its life into the dream of life, it gave life to the thought, the image of the horse and the cow and man and the grass and the plants. We can sense that image. We can touch, taste, feel, smell, hear, see that image. But with nonsense, you can't touch, taste, feel, smell, hear, see A or B or C or 1, 2, 3 or compass or square or geometry or mathematics, etc. You can't sense the constructs of Supreme Court. You can sense the remains of sensory life that we would call trees and soil and rocks and mountains that we've now destroyed to turn them into bricks and concrete and plastic, etc. You can still sense that. But the life, the original purpose, the original dream, the original thought of the purpose is no longer there because it's been removed. It's been taken away. This is what we call nonsense. It's the same as astrology, theology, astrotheology, Hermetic philosophy, all the occults and esoterics, no matter what, it is all nonsense. There is nowhere in the dream of life where our children can go to learn about that information without us first having to explain it to them, meaning that we have to be got at, we have to be brainwashed, and then represent that nonsense to our children, who then represent that nonsense, and they fall into it. Now, all nonsense is not of the dream of life. It has no purpose. All it can do is make us forget the true original dream. And in doing that, we fall away. We start to forget who we really are.
As
and
we
what
surround
our true
ourselves
purpose.
more and more with more and more of the dead world, the more and more we lose that connection. So that's as we move into apartments more and houses where the gardens are getting smaller and we're just surrounded by everything dead.
Nonsense, exactly.
Nonsense.
And what nonsense is a distraction. It's an aberration, an abomination. It stops us from being present to the presence of life. The Creator, in creating the dream of life, in putting its breath and becoming man in the bubble, in the hologram, its presence is present to the bubble. Its life is present with the presence of life to the cow, to the air, to the celestial bodies, to everything that makes up the dream of life. And because it is in present sense, we can touch, taste, feel, smell, hear, see. Because we, man, are of present sense. We are in present sense. We're not nonsense. It's just that our brain has been hijacked to represent nonsense images, giving us the impression that they are true and that we should follow them and set that into motion. And this is the basis of the satanic world, the Freemasonic satanic world, constructed by their grand architect, their founding father, a man just like us, who dreamed of a dream of nonsense, to get man to fall into those images of nonsense so that man could start to forget who man was and what man was part of. And in doing that, cause man to commit spiritual suicide, because that's really what we're doing. Now, I liken this to the ant colony metaphor analogy that we've used previously. Imagine going to the ant colony and saying, listen guys, we've got a new program for you. It's called In Divide You All. You're all now individuals. Each of you can have your own politically correct truth. You can now go out and become an engineer, a scientist. You'll go to the university to learn to be an engineer or a scientist. You can become a punk rocker. You can be a drug addict if you want. You can be Christian, Jew, Muslim, anything of race, culture, creed, anything of career that comes out of university, etc. And all the ants go, wow, this is really exciting, because they've never sensed this before. They've never come across this kind of information before. There was no reference point to even comprehend this and what the significance of what's been presented here. And the ants, through the temptation of the excitement of coming across something like this, go, yay, let's go for it, guys. And off they go. And each of them falling into the image of engineers, scientists, punk rocker, drug addict, etc., Jew, Christian, Muslim, New Ager, doesn't matter, following Deepak Chopra, Dalai Lama, does the Bible, the Talmud, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gitas, any ancient scrolls, scripts, anything, it doesn't matter, they've all gone into it, and each one has having their own interest.
Their own journey.
Their journey, exactly, as they think they're on a journey now. In the meantime, the ants are forgetting who they really are and what they're really part of and their true purpose. The children are no longer of the ant colony being cared for. The elderly of the ant colony are no longer being cared for. And worst of all, the ant colony is no longer being maintained. And so it collapses. And when it's completely gone, all the individuals, all on their individual journeys, all go with it as well. And that's what's become of us. The other analogy that we use to show you what happens with nonsense when we fall for these things is the sun. Imagine the sun radiating all its light out. And it says, I don't want to give it out anymore. I want to own it. I want it to be mine, as in mind. Mine, mind. It's mine. I own. It's mine. And so all the rays now turn back on self, back on mine, I. And where the sun once was, where there was the presence of life present, there now is no life present with the presence of life. Now there's just darkness, what we call nonsense. This is what's become of us when we fall for nonsense.
Because everything that relied on the sun for warmth and light is now gone, is no longer there.
Now the image of light and love and all that, because light is love, light is life. I must stress this point. Light is love. Light is life. Light is sense. Light is sound as well. All the senses are of sense. It's all sensory because it has life. This is what we call Christ. Christ is life. Antichrist is anti-life. It no longer has the presence of life embodied in the image that we are thinking and projecting in the dream of life. So you can't sense 1, 2 or 3. You can't go and visit 1, 2, 3 or A, B, C. You can't go and visit Sagittarius or Aquarius. You can't go and visit astrology or theology or mathematics, because this is all intellectual property, as explained in previous videos that we put up, and the links are there on this one, where we have to learn to become Alice in Wonderland, where we, as Alice, are representing the intellectual property that makes up Alice in Wonderland, so we can perform Alice. As parents coming home after years and years of brainwashing our children to represent Alice in Wonderland, we come home to find our children dressed up as Alice and the Mad Hatter's Tea Party characters. And the dining tables and the chairs and everything in the house that was changed to make up the settings and the props. And we say to our children, "Hi, Bill and Mary, where's Alice? Where's Wonderland?" And they say, "Oh, we are. But aren't you Bill and Mary?" No, we're Alice. Was your first name Bill or is your first name Alice? Are you Mary? Who are you? Are you the Mad Hatter? Who are you? You see, Alice and Wonderland are not present with the presence of life. You can't touch, taste, feel, smell, hear, see Alice or Wonderland. All you can do is touch, taste, feel, smell, hear, see in present sense Bill and Mary. We can hug them. We can sense their breath. And it requires the living with the presence of life to be dumbed down, brainwashed into representing Wonderland images, nonsense images. And while our children are lost representing Alice and Wonderland, they have forgotten who they really are, because they're now in the act of performing Alice in Wonderland. The same as the system that we live under. We are all the descendants of tribes of man all across earth who were invaded and decimated by this agenda, by this Freemasonic satanic agenda. Every alphabet language that ever existed that was created were created by these people. Explain the background to this again. Up to 1780 AD, roughly as a reference point, 99.99% of the total population of man all across Earth could not read and write any alphabet language and never did. Even up to 1930 AD, still more than 90% of the population of man were illiterate to all alphabet languages. This means that today's supposed 6.7 billion population of man, now they're saying 7 billion, we say suppose because we think it's all garbage. No one's present there to know what the true figures are. All their ancestors, going back through all recorded history, had nothing to do with it because they couldn't do it. Because they all had their true tongue, which was the song of life that was set into motion by the Creator in the original image. And we'll explain that again a bit later. Might want to take a note on that so we don't forget that point. We're writing notes, guys, while we're doing this, because we want to have this video be as thorough and detailed as possible, so you can comprehend the bigger picture we've been seeing it and discussing in so many of our videos and debates and discussions and articles posted on Facebook and elsewhere. So if you can comprehend that 99.99% of the total population of man were totally illiterate. They could not record any history in any form of alphabet language and never did. The only ones who could do that were the owners of the castles, the high priesthoods, the aristocrats, all the royal families, and all their scribes and lackeys, and they roughly represented 20 per 1 million of the population of man. They're the only ones who could record history. So when you dive into his story, because that story is an image, in that image are many other images.
Many stories.
Of many other stories. That's why you call it universe. The verse is a story. One story. That's why you go to university, to learn the one story that is the system. The oneness of the system. And the university that provides you with all the course and careers are all the tentacles of the organs and glands of the dead beast, the dead body, that is the system that we have to set into motion and walk and talk and think and feel and poo and wee and negotiate and contract for it, because it can't do it.
And in fact, all those learning as children to make believe and act other roles is our training for when we're in the system performing our system jobs, that we are used to acting out a nurse.
The ants in the ant colony
officer.
the ants in the ants colony who were hijacked to become the police officer. You know, the police officer pulls you over. He's a man acting in costume and title. But does he have a higher standing than another man? Are not all men equal? No man is master of another man. But in the fairy tale of the brainwashing of the university and all the courses and careers that come out of university is nonsense.
And in fact, the policeman pulling you over, the only reason we accept that is because he's got his costume on. If someone not in a costume tried to pull you over, you'd be saying, "Excuse me, what are you doing? It's none of your business. Who are you to tell me what to do?" But because he's wearing his title, we go, "Oh, okay, I better stop. I better do what he says." Suddenly, just because he's got a costume on, just like Mary dresses up as Alice, he's got his costume on, and that makes us go, "Oh, I've got to do what he says now."
Because we are also in costume acting as a representative of the name, which we explained in our previous videos. The name is the mark of the beast, the straw man that identifies your slave status in the system. And another video about under the spell of intellectual property. And there's another video where there was an interview with Ben Lowry. These three videos will give you a very good, bigger picture insight into a lot of these themes, which we won't have to repeat here in this one.
And you know what, because we are so well versed in the story that is the system, we know the whole picture when it comes to the policeman. We know that he's not acting alone. He's not just a man alone. We know that he's got the force of the law behind him. And if we get difficult, he can radio a few more police cars to come down and chuck us in the back and take us down to the police station. That's why we accept the authority. We see the costume and we understand, or we comprehend, we do understand the story behind that uniform. And that's why we comply to what he tells us to do.
That's why Bill and Mary understand Alice in Wonderland. They are under the standing of the story of Alice in Wonderland. They have accepted that the power of the images that are Alice and the Mad Hatter's Tea Party and all the other images that make up the setting of Wonderland, they've accepted it with authority. And so they have now acquiesced and they've complied to that story by acting it. If they weren't going to comply, acquiesce, they wouldn't believe it. They wouldn't give their energy to that image. So the education system came off the ships of the invaders, who invaded all the lands where all the tribes of man were standing on and living their lives. Now, what we think has happened, and we explained this again briefly in some of the other videos, that they sent in the Freemasonic satanic orders and sects. That's what Ra-El is Isis, Ra, and El. They're 3 of the 13 orders or sects of Egypt. Egypt is the system. Egypt means the system. And every ancient civilization is the system. And they all had read and write alphabet languages, mathematics and geometry. They all had, and this includes the Mayas, the Incas, the Aztecs, the Chinese, and every other civilization that was buried under the waters of the firmament that collapsed, which we'll talk about that, if you can write that down. The firmament of man's breath that collapsed and filled all the lowlands where all our ancestors resided. And underneath those waters are the remains of all the dead buildings. Now, it all came down at the same time, guys. There's no such thing as carbon dating. There's no such thing as 100,000 BC. Explain that too later. There's no 100,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, and all this. This is all nonsense. It's all garbage. It all went at the same time. What we now call ancient Greece, Rome, Babylon, the remains of Sumeria, the remains of the Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayans, the Chinese civilization, and everywhere else. They're all the nations and countries of the system of that time. No difference today where you got Argentina and Peru and Mexico, America, Canada, Siberia, Russia, Bolivia over there, and you got Germany and Greece and England and Italy, and you got New Zealand and Tahiti, and you've got Australia, and you've got China and Vietnam and all that. It's the same thing, guys. They are all of the system. Everywhere where you see nations and countries and civilizations and principalities and estates and states, they are all of the system. They were all once tribes of man who were invaded and decimated by these images of these black magic warlocks and witches trying to shove these images down your throat. Now, as explaining, they probably spent up to 200 years coming onto the lands of all these tribes as missionaries, scientists, botanists, etc., living amongst the tribes, documenting their customs, their ways of life, documenting their tongues, documenting everything they possibly can about the natural environment that they're part of. And when they got sufficient information of all that, and they recorded it all, they then sent in their warships and armies to decimate those tribes. What remained of those tribes, mainly children, were then brainwashed into the recorded history that was in alphabet languages by these storytellers, because that's what they are, they're storytellers, and the children were then given an alternative version, and gradually through the generations of the brainwashing, they are the ants fleeing the ant colony to go to become the individuals in the system that is the beast that they now live for. And this is what you see of all the original man. We're all of the original man, all of the original breath. Now we call them Aboriginals, American Indians, etc.
And so we've come from knowing the true power of who we are in nature, which is who we are, to being told that, oh, it was the Dark Ages and everyone was scrabbling around and you know, it was a hard life and everyone died when they were 40 or something like that. And the system is supposed to be the pinnacle of civilization. I mean, here we are, we're destroying everything, destroying each other. But no, this is it. This is as good as it gets.
Yeah. Now the system, imagine it is a beast, an abomination. It's a dead corpse. It's a dead body. You're walking and you come across a dead body. And you want to represent that dead body and give it life, acting as if it has life, even though it'll never ever have life. So you pick it up. And you want to walk for it, so you got to walk for it. You got to move its arms and its legs and its knees and everything. You want to move its head, you got to turn it, move its head. You want to reach its, you want to open its mouth, take its tongue out. You want to open its eyes. The act of representing the beast is the image made up by the founding father of the system, that are all the men and women who are now the representatives, the authorities of that system, of that image, of that dream, and everything that's filled in that dream. Now go back. The Creator created a dream of life, and all that information held in that hologram is there. And that's all set into motion as sense. Another man of us created another dream, and created a dream, a hologram, without sense, without the breath of life embodied in it. All he could do was have thoughts without life. And all he could do was to have man fall into that bubble, into that vortex, where man can act and perform anti-life, anti-Christ, act out images that have no life. Every image being a dead corpse that can't do anything, as if a piece of paper. A piece of paper is of a tree that was removed and killed, changed. The piece of paper can't move from desk to desk. We have to move from desk to desk. The piece of paper can't be scribbled and marked on. We have to do the scribbles and mark on. Same with money and commerce and insurance and all the story that makes up the system of the laws, and all that goes to libraries of all the statutes and all the law books, and you go into the university and all the history books. The whole thing is a story, a universe, and the whole thing is dead.
And because everything has to be dead, because if he was creating life, if the story of the system was about creating life, it would just be life.
And every
Part
child,
of life that it
exactly,
already is.
And every child in present sense, breathing the original breath, has access to it in present sense. The sun shines only here and now. We breathe only here and now. All man's thought occurs only in present sense, here and now. Everything set into motion in the act of movement is occurring only in present sense. The truth is in present sense. We do not have to represent anything of present sense. We don't have to pick up a dead corpse, which we do when we pick up any of the images of the dead corpse university that is the dead world, the satanic world, ruled by the grand architect, their founding father they call Satan, Lucifer, Moloch, Baal, Zeus, Ahriman, Odin, and there are many other names they've given this nutcase.
Yeah, because
And
if you want...
let me finish.
Sorry.
They have, and all his children, all his descendants of those bloodlines are the founding fathers of all the civilizations that we call America, Australia, New Zealand, England, etc. They are all the descendants. They're all Freemasons. They're all Satanists. But you will not come across any of these books and learn it in English, because everything's written in code, in hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics is A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. All alphabet languages, no matter how far back you go, it's all nonsense. They use code, and they use etymology and phonetics of that code, because every code is a sound, it's a symbol. And we set it into motion through the breath, that is the water of life. And we'll talk about this further on in the video. So they learn, those who are initiated into the orders, into the sects of Egypt, and the Western world is Egypt, and every other country is of Egypt. We're still in Egypt. Look at all the houses and suburbs. They've all got 22 and 33 degree pitched roofs. You'll see all these symbols. You go through the cities, you'll see all the remains of all the architecture and the symbols and the codes of Egypt everywhere. All through Sydney you'll see them. Obelisks, pyramid shapes, eagles. You're going to see doves and all kinds of other symbols. And there's a vast amount of this kind of imagery that you can explore in YouTube and Google and learn about this and do the best you can to comprehend what's going on. But they do not teach their captives. Remember, we're all the descendants of tribes of man that were invaded and decimated by this agenda. And to keep us enslaved, while they maintain some kind of communication with each other that we slaves cannot comprehend, because while we don't know what's going on, they can still rule us and laugh at us while we're still seen as the scum and the garbage, or what they call the goy and the goyim and the cattle that they look at us as being, which we are, while we're dumbed down and stupid, acting as dumbed down slaves in the system.
You were talking about the initiates.
Yes.
What happens with the initiates?
Yeah, well, what happens, the initiates, you can't even get access to the information of the codes and the phonetics of etymology and phonetic and all that sort of stuff without being invited up. Now imagine the system is a compartmentalized pyramid. David Icke covers this ground very well. The bank teller doesn't know what's been discussed above him as the bank manager. He doesn't know what's been discussed by the area manager, and he doesn't know what's been discussed in the power above him by the state manager and the bigger manager and other managers. You go up all the way the pyramid. The whole system is all made up by organizations, organizations. They're all glands of the dead corpse body, the beast that we walk around and represent. So information is provided on a need-to-know basis. So you only know what you know. Now the vast population are at the bottom there. They only know English and the sounds and the images of English that they were taught, made up of the words that we use out of the dictionary, and out of I guess the thesaurus and stuff like that. But the initiates, the ones who are invited in. Now, when you get inside the Freemasonic satanic world, both male and female, the order, the Eastern Order stars for the women primarily. You're going to find many other orders and sects. You don't often hear about them. But when you're invited in, usually you've come out of Lions Club, Rotary clubs, and other Masonic lodges, where there's a lot of benevolence and charity, and the facade, because this is the primary image they use out front on the surface. This is no difference to lollies. You have these wonderful lollies, packaged beautifully, and they're really sweet tasting, but inside there's the one lie hidden in it. Poison, aspartame, MSG, and we tempt our children, and we all get tempted by these methods. The same as the initiates who are initiated into the higher orders of the compartmentalized world that is the Freemasonic satanic agenda. When you are invited up and they suss you out, there's always somebody inside every major group who looks for someone suitable, if they can find someone suitable, and they bring it forward to their groups to discuss who they're going to invite in. If they find a suitable candidate, and you have been one of those, you've been invited in, you don't even know what you're going to be initiated into. But when you do get initiated, you are now, above the benevolent Shopani levels, you are now under an oath of destruction and death. You are now caught up as part of the rolling stone that is the wrath of all your brothers and sisters of the fraternities and orders that you are part of. You do not go against them. Each one caught up is also under the same fear and wrath of each other. So the agenda of the whole system, that is the Freemasonic satanic world, is a rolling stone out of control. And there's nobody involved taking responsibility. That's why when Fiona was kidnapped by the highway patrolman who they sent in to take her to the back of the Barrel police station, you can get all this in the article that we posted, not an article, it's the Fiona Cristian vs. State Debt Recovery Office, Part 5, Part 6, Part 7. I'll put the link up. You can see all the photos of all this. But what you'll find, they kidnapped her because they wanted to intimidate us, particularly try and intimidate me, to try and stop us from doing this work we've been doing all these years, trying to learn. And this guy, at the back of the police station, David Brown, hello David, if you're watching this video, which I'm sure you will be, his eyes went green, his eyes fell behind his head as he was at the back of the car park when I walked up and confronted him while he's still containing Fiona inside the police station. And he said to me, well, I won't go over all the details there, you can read up about all this sort of stuff. But I saw in his eyes that he'd been initiated and he'd been exposed to fear. And I would assume, and I'm guessing this, but I'm assuming he's been exposed to ritual sacrifice and all kinds of horrors. And he's so loyal. Now you also find in these initiates, some who don't get initiated that high, they're people who've been found with drugs and robbery and breaking and entry and all this sort of stuff. And they get given the temptation to join in some of these groups. And if you go and do the things for us, you'll have access to free sex and money and orgies and all the other wonderful temptations the satanic world offers and provides protection for you. Even if you get caught as a pedophile, they'll give you 5-star hotel status inside Long Bay Jail temporarily until they get you out again, while they keep working on protecting all these pedophiles and etc. But these thugs, they drive around. They're the ones who disturb groups, all the good groups. They become part of the group members. These become the intelligence agents. Now, they're not all people who've done crime. These are people that are also found inside universities and courses and careers, and they also found in private schools and in public schools. They find the brainy and the smart ones, and they suss them out, and they put them under certain tests. You get invited in, and there are many of these intelligence agents all around us who act as if they're one of us. And we explain that in Part 5D of the Dream of Life videos about intelligence agents. And they come onto Facebook, and they join your groups, until eventually they turn against you. And they try and create such a scene to try and scare everybody else off in your group, thinking that, my God, this kind of stuff goes on here, this is not a nice place to be, scare off. So they use kind of chaos and harm. They try to ridicule you and abuse you. They come to suss out how you're living in your home and all this sort of stuff. Again, watch that video 5D and you'll get a good idea of this. But the initiates, generally, all work for the beast, that is the system, to protect the power of the system over all the slaves that we all are. So that the rolling stone that's out of control, that is the beast, which is made up of all the men and women who live for the university story of the beast, keep doing all the work, because we're the ones who have to think for it. We have to feel for it. We have to smell for it. We have to perform for it. We have to do everything for it. And because it's dead, and we want to create images that are physical and material forms, we have to destroy the sensory dream of life, alter the original purpose of the original breath of the Creator that we are, that are the trees and the mountains and the valleys and everything, to turn it into dead things that we now call microscopes and telescopes, that we now call it carbon dating, and that we now call it gravity, and we call it astrology, astronomy, numerology, and all the other occults and esoterics. Now everybody's a slave. Now, as we explained in some of those videos again, a microscope and a telescope, it's dead. It's a dead corpse. You can't go and visit the microscope and telescope and talk to it. You can't go and find its ancestors or its descendants. It's just the remains of destroyed sensory life where the water had been removed and or altered. You can't even look at a microscope or telescope and let it tell you everything with what you're observing. All that is going on is the brainwashing of the universe story, his story that you've been brainwashed into, that you are now, your head is so full of, representing as you're looking through that microscope and telescope. Be it astrology, be it quantum physics, be it any form of science, etc. All you can do is sense the one little thing that you're observing. But because we're so brainwashed in nonsense, and because our parents are so brainwashed in nonsense, and everyone else around us has been caught up in nonsense of that alphabet language, of that system, of that time, in this case the Western world that we're all present to now, we think these are the norms. So we fill our heads up with more nonsense as we use nonsense to look at sense, a life form. Trying to get nonsense to tell us something about sense. Now how can something dead tell us anything about the living? How can something that has no life tell us anything about life? How absurd is this? And we call them scientists and engineers and astrologers and theologians and experts and academics and professors. And we call them teachers and educators. And we call them politicians and judges and barristers and lawyers, etc. Every area of the system, they are man, they are the ants lost in the history of individualism, individuals.
Well, what they are is experts in the system.
Experts
in the story of the system.
And all they can do is do harm. Because the engineer that comes out of the universe, the man that was brainwashed, he can't see the purpose, sense the purpose of the forest. All he can see is the highway he's going to build through it, and the skyscrapers and the cities and the concretes and the plastics, and he's going to look at the mountains and look at what he can do by destroying the mountains to turn it into steel and copper, or turn it into whatever we call that is now part of the system science.
Because he's not looking at
He's not sensing
the wood, he's not sensing
the purpose.
The forest as a whole. So we just think, oh, we'll just take out that bit of the forest, but taking out that bit of the forest affects the whole forest, all the rest of the forest, because every plant in that forest is part of the forest of a whole, is part of the life of that forest. So you take one thing out, you're going to change everything.
He's not sensing the purpose and the intricate relationship, everything that makes up the purpose that is the forest, that makes up the whole of the dream of life. All he's doing is representing Alice in Wonderland. He's representing the images of nonsense, brainwashing him over years and years of brainwashing, starting with the sounds of A, B, C, and 1, 2, 3. As explained in the Dream of Life Part 6, under the spell of intellectual property. He was put under the spell of A, B, C, and all the sounds and images that come out of the phonetics and etymology of A, B, C that we make into words. And what you got here is an echo chamber. The brain has been used as an echo chamber because these images have got nowhere to go because there's no life form to embody. You see, as explained, we can't tell our children to go and visit A or B or C. They can only go under the spell of A and represent Alice as A, represent B. So the head is bouncing to and fro of all the spells, of all the nonsense, which becomes the shutters to the blinds of our distraction. Each one, each spell, each image we learn, and we compile them, add to all the other nonsense, which forms the books, which forms all the courses and all the records of all the university. We completely put up the curtains and the blinds to sense. We have now fallen into nonsense. We are totally lost. And while we are lost, we are destroying everything that is sense, including us, or starting with us. And if we forget who we really are, we will destroy the dream of life.
And if you look at, I was just thinking what you're saying, when we have to learn the A and the B and the C, how unnatural that is and how long it takes us. Whereas if you compare, if you have a young child and you have a dog, they can come to each other, they can sense each other within moments, they have a relationship formed and they can be playing together and communicating and enjoying each other. Whereas we put a child in school, and how many years does it take them to learn to read and keep reading?
The system is just the image made up by another man. And inside that image, inside that hologram, is an ocean of images, all made up of nonsense. And as this lie wears thin, because it's nonsense, it's nowhere sense, meaning when men, women, children who are trapped in nonsense through the brainwashing, under the standing of their superiors, the administrators and representatives who are enforcing their version of reality upon all of us, and as they've done through all the ancestors when all this rubbish started in the Vedic cultures, because it all came out of the Vedic cultures right back before Egypt even began with pyramids and all this sort of stuff, because there was a man who made it up, part of the tribes. And this unfolded the mystery Babylons and all the secrets and all this deception that, over the generations where this all came about. Now, we can, if you want to dive into all this stuff and learn about it, it's in the history books, but you got to use scrutiny, you got to use your brain to look for the sense in everything that you're reading, because they are telling you the truth in their books, but you got to know the codes of the English language, because every letter of the English language has a meaning. Like the letter A means something, and B and C, that has a meaning. But they don't teach you those meanings at school. They don't teach you, or to your parents or anyone else. No one else knows them. Only the initiates know this stuff. And so they use it to communicate with each other, like we experienced it in the courts, where they talk to each other through Old English. And when, in this case, the barrister say, "Arr, Your Honour, arr, arr." Is, if you look at it carefully, I can't tell you much more than this, but R is the viper. It's got the mouth of the viper. And what he's saying is, asphyxiate my client, poison my client, paralyze my client. Because they're working together in mortgage cases. Because when you look inside the courts, when they get into the hot topics like mortgages and breaking the contracts of mortgages, because they don't want a precedence. They don't want any precedence to be established anywhere. One precedence would bring the whole system down, collapse everything, because word of mouth will spread so fast. So the innocent client who thinks that the barrister and the lawyers working for him are actually working against him all this time, because it's just us. It's not justice, it's just us. It's the system. We have to protect the system so that our power is maintained, because we don't want to have further chaos be introduced by establishing a precedence that will allow millions and millions of serfs and commoners to use that precedence to destroy all contracts of all banks. So the barrister says, "Arr, Your Honour." He's telling, destroy my client. Wipe him out. That's just one example of heaps. Now, the initiates are all slaves to this problem. No matter how high up you go inside the Freemasonic dead corpse, the beast that is the system, and we call them today the royal families, the high priesthoods, the aristocrats, the popes, the kings and queens, the presidents, directors, board of directors, shareholders, etc. All these people aren't going to win, because they're not heading anywhere. There is no journey that they are really going on to, because in sense there is no journey that way. It's only in nonsense do we think that we're on a journey heading from somewhere to somewhere. It's only in the fantasy of the fairy tale of performing Alice in Wonderland do we think that these images that make up all the characters and props have some kind of resonance of power. And they were just children like all of us. None of them were given idiot-friendly full disclosure to say, listen, Jack, is it okay that we give you these nonsense images, and let's explain what nonsense is to them, that if you set these images into motion, because we're the only ones who can set images into motion, all images are thoughts. Is it okay, Jack, if we let you set, if we encourage you, tempt you to set these images into motion, and you become those images, and you fall into those images, so that then you will become a cog in the wheel of the system progress that is the civilization and the nation of the beast that we call the Western world today, or Egypt.
And you will destroy your life in the
and
process.
You will destroy your life in the process, and destroy everyone else that comes in contact with you, and everyone who is impacted by these images that you keep spreading everywhere. Is it okay? Right? And meaning that you're also going to commit spiritual suicide, because you're going to forget who you are. And as you haven't created man, there ain't no man to continue on with, as the body of this man forms back into water and through the soil and everything else, which in the dead world they call death. Right? Now, if that child comprehended that, do you think that child would say yes? While that child still has innocence, while that child still has a lot of sense, where the child has less blinkers on, less shutters, shutting the child down from sense? Of course not. The child's going to say no. So we've got to forgive every man, woman and child lost to all the esoterics and occults everywhere throughout the system. All the information that makes up university, all the secret mysteries, all the garbage that's coming out of everywhere, guys. You've got to forgive them all, because they were babies and they aren't going anywhere. They're not heading on a journey anywhere, guys. As we are. There's nowhere to go. This is it. We'll explain more of that about water. In the system, they teach you astrology, numerology, they teach you astronomy, they teach you all the things that give you the impression of Wonderland, where Earth is a planet. It's turning and going around this thing called the sun. And these other things called planets, Mars and Venus, etc. And they're all turning and going around the sun. And we call this a solar system. And this solar system is turning and going around a galaxy of many galaxies, all going around a universe of many universes. And everything is in a state of movement, right? Giving you that impression makes you also think that you are also on a journey turning with everything else. But the impression is given that the solar system and the astrology and the numerology and all the system science that comes out of all of this stuff has more power than you. So hence the astrologer who's been brainwashed will think that Sagittarius is now in the 7th house. And it's going to affect you, Fiona, tomorrow. You're now going to be happy. But in 3 days, you better be careful, because Venus is going to square Mars in the 7th house, which is going to square the 6th house. And we're going to sit here and work all this out. You might have an economic problem. You better watch your bank account and watch out for strange people coming into your life on Friday too. Mm-hmm. And in fact, watch out for me, because I could become grumpy on Friday and I might want to do something that could possibly hurt you. So you better protect yourself, because it's all in the charts of the astrology, guys. Now, this is garbage. You see, all this is set to a time code. All fairy tales are set to a time code. An example, and we'll come back to this about astrology and all this sort of stuff, and in fact we'll come back to the Bible, because the Bible to me is one of the classics of all of this problem. And this is what we've got to help all the people call themselves Christians and all the time. You've got to get your head around this, guys, because we're going to show you how big this deception really is and what really is going on. Now, Fee and I, we're in 33 BC because our parents told us we live in 33 BC. Now, we can't go and visit 33 BC to tell us, is it true we're in 33 BC? Our parents been got at by the time code of that time, by those around them who told them that we are living our lives to the time, and we call it 30 BC, 31 BC, 32 BC, 33 BC, and going backwards, or we go forwards to 29, 28. Now, we have fallen into that image, and set to that image of time is this thing called the Old Testament. We call it the Bible. And there are images of nonsense coded in the Bible, telling us about the prophecies of the end times to come. And it's all set to the time codes from 33 BC right up through the calendar of the time code to the end times of now 2012, 2013, 2014. Now, if we fall into the nonsense image of 33 BC, we'll teach our children those images, who will teach our grandchildren. And so as they unfold through the story, the fairy tale that is the Bible that of time, they'll be living the times of 72 AD and 26, let's change it to 1270 AD, 1450 AD, right up until 1780 AD. And the only common denominator is that we in 33 BC are breathing the breath of life and setting that breath into motion in present sense, where the sun is shining on here and now, where everything only occurs in present sense, with our children who are also setting it into motion in present sense, that time code and that belief of that fantasy. And as it's passed down through the generations of this image, because the only way the image can pass on through man to man, through breath to breath, is through present sense. Man has to be present with the presence of life, who passes it on to man with the presence of life passed on to man. So we pass it on to our children, who pass it on to our grandchildren, who pass it on to our great-grandchildren. And these images are believed in, the story. So now we are the children of those great ancestors of ours, V. And the Bible is telling us we're living in the end times, and look at all these things that are occurring. And because there are millions of us who are believing in the images of setting into motion all the prophecies and everything else that makes up the Bible.
Oh, look, it's happening around us. It must be true. What was written was true, because look, we're making it. It's happening now. Well, of course it is, because we're making it happen.
We are creating it with our breath in present sense. And we're so dumbed down and stupid to see it.
And, you know, it's on the same thing on the smaller scale within the Freemasonic satanic world. They're passing down the story of their power, superiority, privilege, exclusivity is being passed down family to family, generation to generation. So it carries on.
Alice in Wonderland being represented through man to man, through the breath, from man to man to man to man, through the breath, because we set those images into motion in the breath that is the water of life. So if
remember that expression, they say, be careful what you wish for. Well, there you go. And it's totally true. You can wish for something and suddenly you're not really aware of what you're thinking about. And the truth of that is not always what you want.
The masters of Freemasonry, of Satanism, are the masters of storytelling. They're all storytellers. And the story had to keep being adapted because the lie wears thin, because we, the captives, trapped in these prisons. Because remember, our ancestors were trapped, and to maintain our slave status, they had to come up with methods to keep us dumbed down and stupid. So they had to give us fantasy stories, which they gave us time codes and tell us we're on a journey to the afterlife. We're on a journey now where the Galactic Federation is coming to beam us up. We're going to be saved. We've got Jesus or Jesus coming to save us. We have all these saviors and messiahs. This is all nonsense, guys. You can't go and visit Jesus. And we'll talk about the apparitions in the water. So if you could mind if you could just write that down.
I wanted to say just quickly that, like, there's no death in life. Even if this body the heart stops beating and the blood stops flowing, if I'm laid into the ground, my body becomes the life in the soil that goes into the trees and all that. So there is no death. So the only rebellion against life is death. Which is what we have in the system. It's taking life and making it dead. That's the only way we can do anything that's anti-life. It's got to be dead. But within life, there is no death.
In fact, the breath that you breathe is your life there. It's in the water. And that water is permanent in present sense. The original breath is in present sense. We breathe that original breath in present sense. That life that is the breath is the life that we are in present sense. The life of every man that ever was and ever will be is in present sense. That life is your breath. It is the breath of life that is man's consciousness. That consciousness is our breath. It is who we are. That is water. Water is who we are. We're not apart from water. We're not separate from water. There is no outside to water. There's no inside to water. People say that you can go within. Well, the Dalai Lama tells you to go within. The Dalai Lama gives you that impression because they're saying to you, don't worry about all the power and control around you. Don't worry about all the infrastructures of all the system. Just learn to go within and become neutralized. Become apathetic, become dumbed down and stupid.
Become peaceful even when there's people being abused next door.
Exactly.
Just be peaceful.
Just accept it all. There's a karma to everything, guys. Everyone's easy picking. Learn to accept it, because the person who believes that thinks they're part of this universal consciousness and they're all on a journey heading from somewhere to somewhere. Let me tell you, it's black magic. What the Dalai Lama is talking about is black magic. They're just keeping you dumbed down and stupid. Where is this within? Okay, we get your body. I got a knife. I cut your gut open. I open your gut. I get blood coming out, water. I look in further. I see organs and glands and tissues. I see water. I go and I see your bones. I see water. I go past the back. I start going through to the back and I cut open. And I cut you right open now. I've gone from outside, from the front now to the back. All I see is water. Water before and water after. All I see is water. Where is this within? People say the within exists. Bring forward the within so our children can experience the within without us having to explain it to them. Bring forward astrotheology. Bring forward astrology. Bring forward system science. Bring forward A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3, without anyone having to represent that Alice character, without having to represent A or B or C. Again, where can our children go to without us having to explain A to them, without anyone exposed to the system and brainwashed to explain it to them, where they can go and learn uniquely about A, or Sagittarius, or astrology, or astrotheology? Because you see, it's not in present sense, it's not in the breath of life. It doesn't have a purpose. It's not of the dream of life. It shows you clearly the lie, guys. It shows you clearly just how big this deception is. Now, explain in some of the other videos. If I say to you, I'll say to Fiona, that over there, that's a kale, and it's green. And it's part of this plant family, brassicas. And they do this and that, and they're part of this and that, see? And I go on and on about it, and I fill your head up with these images. So that next time, when you come across that life form and you sense it, you'll be representing, if I've been good enough to put you under the spell of what I've told you about it, because you're no longer having a direct experience of that information from that life form. You're getting it from me. So you're now going to represent what I've told you about it. So what I've done to you, I've put you under my spell, and I can control you now, because it's like a fisherman who sends the hook with the bait into the ocean of life, and you've come as the fish and snapped my bait, and you're now under a state of belief. Imagine I said to you before about the film projector. The brain is a film projector, and this information I gave you is now the film you've loaded into the brain, and now, because it's got nowhere to go to, and now because this is the ABC of the spell, you have to remember. And we call this the subconscious, because the subconscious doesn't exist either. They're figments of our brains or our sensory imagination. These are just images we try to keep in focus. So our eyes send out light, which is the film projector, the light, the film passing across the brain, A, B, C, kale, brassicas, etc. I put you under my spell, and you're projecting the same image over and over and over again. Christianity, Bible, Dalai Lama, the Galactic Federation, quantum physics, mathematics, geometry. It goes on and on to every course and career that comes out of the university. I put you under the spell of the brassica and the kale. And you keep projecting the image of that into the cinema of life that is nature in present sense. It's bouncing back to you in the image of your projection, meaning you have now taken a potato sack of that intellectual property that I've taught you, and you've now put it over that life form that we call a kale, because you no longer can have a direct experience with that life form anymore. You now can only represent me in that image. So you can't go to that life form and sense its purpose to let it tell you everything about it. So this is what's happened to all the captives, under all the systems that ever existed, under all the alphabet languages that ever existed, and all their methods of brain control to keep us trapped. We're fallen into nonsense. And today you have David Icke, Jordan Maxwell, Santo Bonacci. You have 1,001 of these people everywhere. They're all babies too. They've all been got at. Most of them are probably under an oath of death and destruction. They're probably all totally complicit and compliant to their orders and sects, because they work both as the good guys and the bad guys. As the lie wears thin as the system, because there's a dead corpse. You can't keep walking the dead corpse because it rots. The lie rots. And the truth starts exposing, because all of man that are trapped, some of man are going to use their brain and realize the deception. Who is this man who thinks he's a centurion, he's going to have a higher power than me, and he's got the spear, and he can spear me? You know, what gave him the right to have a higher standing than me? What gave the senators of Rome and all the power infrastructures of pharaohs and Egypt and the high priests of Egypt have the power and the rights over me? Right? They don't. Some people are going to wake up to this and realize all men are equal, that no man is master of another man, and most importantly, do no harm. We need to explain this again later. We're going to go back over this do no harm and pharaohs and all that stuff, because these people are just representing nonsense. They're representing a lie. Now their lie wears thin. As we notice it in here and now in present sense, we're seeing through all the garbage of all the nonsense that they pounded us with through my parents and everybody else around me that were brainwashed, and through the education system I was pounding with. But we've been strong enough, especially for someone like myself. So I want to say, but this man, I pulled out in 2006, and Fiona, being the real powerhouse, supported the whole family and supported me in doing this research, because I had to stop all the distractions So I could use my brain to scrutinise everything I'm reading. That's why I debate and argue with everybody everywhere all this time, trying to work out who we really are, what's really going on. How is it? And this is the things that got me going, we'll get back to this stuff, is that if there was one truth that was true, you would think in all the holy books and scrolls and tablets and all the philosophies that are unfolded across all their books and records, it would have spread by word of mouth today. Even in the last 30, 40 years, it's all been coming out of the New Age movement everywhere. If there was one truth, don't you think by now we would have set into motion paradise and do no harm in a way of life? Why is it the opposite's happening? That wherever we go, through all the civilizations that ever exist everywhere, all we find is the destruction and chaos of man. What you're going to see is the truth about this.
Trapped within our world, watching dreams without blue skies floating by. Why are the grey clouds forming overhead? Forming overhead. I'm trying to breathe, I'm following a path mapped out from the start. Why do my dreams keep moving out of sight? Moving out of sight. Sunshine that I seek shines faintly through the smoke. Layers of fantasy, images that blind us to our lives, blind us to our lives. And I'm trying to see, I'm juggling with my things, I'm struggling with the cold. And I'm spinning in a vortex of burning words, of burning words. Ooh, and my head's on fire. Oh, where's the love inside my heart to wake me up from storyland, from my deep sleep? We'll save the forest, we'll save the mountains, we'll save the ocean when we save our lives. We'll save the children, we'll save the old ones, we'll save our earth when we save our lives. By doing no harm. Ooh. We're living for the love that lights up in our hearts. We're living for the dream of a world of do no harm. We're living for our kin, our tribe of conscious men. We're living for the truth, no more waiting for saviors.